you really stand up there in front of a class and try to make a good thing out of the
It's
Holocaust? Or
impossible.
how you sit up there and try to say, okay, yeah, it was slavery, but we're gonna talk about the master
Let's talk
side of
about the master side. Uh,
it.
how did he feel while he is whipping you across the
Yeah, I
back?
mean,
Critical race theory. Is it important to you that your kids know all their history? So today, I'm going to sit down and talk with Meryl Johnson. She's a retired school teacher here in Cleveland, Ohio, and she sits on our state school board representing District 11. So we're going to talk a little bit about critical race theory. So if this sounds like a channel that you'll be interested in, I need you to hit the like button so you can like the show. YouTube love for you to get as many subscribers as we can. So I love for you to hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so that you can find out the next time one of our shows is coming out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button.
she is our state school board member representative for the state of Ohio. The special lady is Meryl Johnson. Miss Johnson, she told me to call you Meryl, but I first met you, it was Miss Johnson, and I met you a long time ago.
Oh, it's too many
Yeah,
levels.
so I'm gonna tell you, it was that long. I'm gonna tell you how I think I remember I met you for the
Okay.
very first time. I think the very first time I met you, Sabra Scott was gonna run for council.
Wow, you are going back
The
away.
very first time she ran for council. She
Okay.
ran a couple of times. So the very first time she ran for council, she wanted to do this kickoff. And in doing this kickoff, she wanted to invite different people to come speak. And at that particular time, Bashir Jones had first came out and he started doing his poetry. And I believe I was at an event or somewhere where you was with him and were helping him when he first got started. And I remember she wanted him to come speak at the thing. And the only person I knew who I could connect to was you.
Okay.
And I remember tracking you down. I think you were working, if I'm not mistaken, Kennedy to see you.
Well, it depends on how long ago it was, because I was at Kennedy from like 2008 to 2012, around there.
It's not one mistaken. You were teaching at Kennedy, but I remember going to you, introducing myself to you, talking to you, and then you gave me Bashir number. And I'm not sure if you even brought him to the event because then he was really young, so he needed to get around. So I don't know if you either brought him to the event or whatnot, but I remember he did come to the event. But that's my latest and fondest memory of meeting you
Okay.
and it was in the classroom because I actually had to go to the school, and that was before you could pick up a cell phone and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I actually had to go to the school and go in the classroom to talk to you about. So let everybody know who's Meryl Johnson.
Meryl Johnson is a person who loves young people. I love teaching. As you said, I taught 40 years in the Cleveland School District. I am a firm believer in social justice. I believe that all people should have the rights that they deserve. I believe in public education. I am a strong advocate for our public schools. Been fighting for our schools for a long time. That's why when I retired in 2012, I wanted to have a bigger voice to fight for our schools and for our kids, especially for our Black kids. And that's when I decided, I think I'm going to run for the state school board. So I ran in 2016.
So prior to that, you graduated of Glenville High School.
Yes, I was.
And that's cool because I grew up in Glenville. So
Yeah.
the more and more I interview and talk to people, it's amazing how many people are from that kind of area.
Yeah.
And whatnot. So what area you grew up over there then?
I grew up on Earl Avenue.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
yeah, you're right there off 105.
yep, yep, on the section of Earl closest to Parkwood,
Right.
and went to Mount Standish,
I went to Mount Stanley.
Empire,
I went to Empire too.
and Glenville.
I got bused.
Okay,
I would have went to Glenville. They sent us to Lincoln West.
okay. But yeah, that's who I am, and it's interesting. I just left a celebration of Leon Bibb getting Parkgate named after him.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know that.
I just came from there.
Oh,
It was a beautiful celebration. Justin Bibb, our mayor, is his cousin, so he
okay.
was there, and just got to see a lot of Glenville people, a lot of tar blooders, and
Okay.
it was quite a wonderful moment. Then we ended up going to a little reception at Glen Village,
Mhm.
which my first time being there, and yeah, so it was wonderful.
So what made you get into teaching?
You know, Ken, and I'm gonna call you Ken. I'm not gonna call you Mr. Dow. Just messing with you. But I grew up with a teacher. My mom taught in Cleveland schools,
Mhm.
and she would come home with the best of stories about her kids.
Okay.
And never had a complaint. She never
Mm.
whined about teaching. She always had some funny little story. She called her kids the rascals,
Mhm.
and she always had some great story to share. And so also I loved English.
Okay.
So combining my love of English and seeing how much my mom enjoyed teaching, I love being in charge. We would, my older brother, he's 16 months older, we would do school and I would always be the teacher. So it just kind of got in me. So I decided that's what I want to do.
And you taught high school all along? Or?
No, started off at East Tech High School for 3 years. Then I went to Charles Eliot Junior High at that time for 33 years, taught two generations of children
Wow.
at Eliot. And then I finished up at Kennedy for 5 years.
Okay.
But I always tell this story from Eliot. The father, his daughter wasn't doing well with her English teacher. And so he asked for her to be in my class because I had taught him.
Wow.
And he said I was a no-nonsense teacher.
Wow.
So they put her in my class and we got along just fine. So
That got to be the ultimate fulfillment, like to see kids grow up and go through the system. And, it's something about your teachers and stuff that, even my kids right now, if they see their teacher from the first grade or the second grade, you always got that. Like,
Yeah.
it's always like they that special or there's something different about them. So I know
And
that has to be
having
great.
taught 40 years, Ken, I see my kids everywhere,
Mhm,
everywhere, grocery store,
mhm,
airport. One time I was crossing the street over at Shaker Square and a young lady was at the red light and she put her car in park and jumped out the car
mm.
and came over and gave me a hug
Wow.
and said, "Miss Johnson," and then went and got back in my car, got back in her car and just took off.
Did you know who she was?
You know what? I never know who they are. I talked so long.
I know, I understand. That's what I'm
And
saying. Did you like even know who they were?
when they say Miss Johnson, I'm like, oh, it's one of my sweeter
Right,
guys.
right.
But yeah, I never know. They accept that.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll say, "Tell me your name," but sometimes it's just automatically I hug them.
Let me ask you, has it been somebody that was in your class that you really said, "Bang, and then you turned out years later to be like, I can't believe he had made a total turn. I didn't
I've
think.
never felt they weren't going to be anything. I never thought that, but I have been somewhat surprised to see
Well,
that
let me put
they,
it that way.
yeah,
Let me
yeah,
say it that way because
yeah,
that is a hard way because
yeah. I've never,
I wouldn't say to that. Yeah, let's
yeah.
say is there how you really
Yeah,
surprised,
pleasantly
pleasantly
surprised.
surprised? Yeah.
Yeah, pleasantly surprised.
Mhm.
I like when they tell me what they're doing and
Compared to what you thought they might have been doing. Let's put
yeah,
it that way. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That's
But
great.
but you gotta have, high expectations and high hopes for your kids. But then when and sometimes like when they were running with the rough gang and stuff,
Right.
sometimes I think they might not have made it. They
Correct.
might not have survived. So
Correct.
sometimes I'm just pleasantly surprised
Mhm.
that they survived. And that's basically where the surprise
So
comes most
what's your
time.
fondest moment of teaching after 40 years? What's your fondest moment?
I
How
gotta
many?
tell you my fondest moment, and this is my fondest moment. When I was teaching at Charles Eliot, I'm a very animated teacher. I like to make my kids laugh. And in junior high, that's especially easy.
Mhm. Right. Right.
And one of my students came up, he said, "Miss Johnson, do you like cartoons?" And I said, "I love cartoons. Why you ask that?" He said, "'Cause you act like a cartoon."
Mm.
And I said, "Oh, I am so flattered." And that's my fondest moment. I mean, just the fact that
Mhm.
that's how I was coming across to him. Because I still sometimes Saturday morning, I'll get up and watch Bugs Bunny. I just love
Mhm.
cartoons, and I just really love
Well,
that
that's
he said
good
that,
because
you know?
cartoons make people happy.
Yeah, I wanted my kids to really enjoy my class. That was my goal. Teachers, we spend a lot of time planning and grading papers and so forth, and I was constantly trying to think of something or find something that the students would really, really enjoy.
Mhm.
So that was just a nice moment for me when he said that.
So 40 years in the system, you done seen a lot of the way teaching's changed. I grew up where they used to be able to SWAT.
You know what? When I first got to Charles Eliot in about 1975, they talked about swatting, and I had come from East Tech High School. I'm like, I'm not swatting anybody. So I never swatted, but that was very popular at that time to swat students.
I just had this flashback of swatting.
I
Because I took a lot of
kind
them.
of funny.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have been a swatter. I just felt like there were other ways to deal with students'
Mhm.
behavior. I called parents a lot.
Okay.
That was my thing.
Got you. Got you.
That's what I did.
So let's talk about what was the worst moment?
Okay, my worst moment was my first year at Charles Eliot. I was teaching, and a young man came up and asked me, could he go to the restroom? I had been told to tell them no.
Okay.
They're like, kids are going to be trying to use the bathroom all the time, so tell them no. So I told him no. So he went in the corner and he urinated in the corner of my room. He was
Wow.
kind enough to turn his back,
Wow.
but I left. I went to the principal and I said, I have to go home. That crushed me.
Mm.
I get teary thinking about it because
Wow.
it was so horrible.
So how you dealt with that?
One of the students liked me, I guess, and he said, "Miss Johnson, I'll get somebody to clean it up." I said, "Thank you." When that class was over, went to the principal and said, "I need to go home. I'm really upset."
So, like, come back the next day, you dealt with the student itself. Cause did you feel he was it wrong, or did you think the way they were telling you not to let kids go to the bathroom was the issue?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
But what I was told was that he just was an unruly child.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. I didn't know
Right.
if it was a situation, it was like, man, I
No.
really, okay. All right.
It was the first time he'd asked me, and I just
Okay.
said no.
Okay.
If he had come back the second time,
Right.
I would have said okay.
Second time with a little dance, he might have got out of it. Right. Okay.
Right.
I
But,
got you.
and like I had never taught in junior high, so it was like
Right.
totally that was my first year,
Got you.
and I was only at fourth year teaching, so
Uh-huh.
and teaching is challenging, so it takes a while to get used to it,
You know,
become comfortable.
the fondest moments of schools, basically junior high, elementary, was the seasons. You know, every time the seasons change, it seemed like it was always a big deal in school. Thanksgiving, Christmas,
Yeah.
Easter's, all the holidays and stuff. And if you had teachers who were really, like you say, into it, it kind of made the school year kind of go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that always made so the recitals and all of that stuff. Were you one of those teachers always involved in that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I was involved in doing programs, and at Elliott, I would organize teacher talent shows.
Okay.
And one year we did a pantomime talent show where this teacher and we did Babyface and Tony Braxton's
Yeah,
song.
really.
And I will give you my love. I had on this real short black dress
Mhm.
and some gold shoes.
Oh, okay.
And the guy, he pretended he was Babyface. And
I remember that song.
yeah. And then I got 3 teachers who were the Supremes.
Ah,
And one of the teachers had a whole bunch of wigs and long dresses, and
okay.
they were beautiful. And it
Okay.
was just really great. And another guy pretended he was Luther Vandross, I think, and he gave roses to the
Mhm.
young ladies in the audience, and they were like, "Ah,
All
ah."
right.
So I was a person that tried to organize really big programs for the kids for some entertainment so they could see their teachers in a different light.
Mhm.
And I like doing that.
So let's talk about a couple other issues as we get down into some of the meat of this stuff, the busing situation. And did you think busing actually hurt us as kids or students for African Americans? In my opinion, I believe busing definitely took away the neighborhood school ability because I was one of the kids who wanted to go to Glenville and
Mhm.
I ended up getting bused, and that wasn't a good experience for me. You have some people who said they had a great experience. It just wasn't a good experience for
Yeah.
me. I hated all of it.
What'd you hate the most about it?
The travel, the
Yeah.
people, it was a monster. Getting on the bus, you had to get out there real early. It may not seem as early as an adult now,
Mhm.
but as a kid, I
Mhm.
mean, we were out there, it was dark when you
Yeah.
had to catch the bus. I'll tell everybody this story, and anybody who knows us, we're from the hood, know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
It was this one girl, I'll never forget her, and I knew her from kindergarten. We'd been together since kindergarten, knew each other. Her name is Priscilla Allen. I'm gonna put her out there. She lived on the corner of Adams, and the bus would come and pick us up right in front of her house.
Mhm.
If you was cool with Priscilla, you get to come in Priscilla's house. This is a real true story. Her mom knew it was cold outside because we had to catch the bus and it was dark.
Mhm.
She would let us in their house. And Priscilla be running around the house half dressed, trying to get dressed, ironing and everything else. And it'd be 20, 10, 15 people standing, and we all knew each
I
other.
didn't ask you how many.
It'd be about 10 or 15 of them. Here goes the biggest part about it. Her mom and her brother was asleep in the dining room in a let-out couch. And she be getting dressed, laying in the bed, and we all standing around, and she be asleep because she worked. That shit was hard. I mean, it was not just hard on, it was hard on her.
Yeah.
Her mom did allow this to happen. That was the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That wasn't cool.
Yeah.
It just wasn't cool. And then just the other aspect of some of the things and the time we were going to school was like, in that time the drug epidemics was high. I think that you should have probably had people closer to where they live versus pushing everybody out. So it made it easier.
How
for
were you
that.
treated when you got over to Lincoln West?
Lincoln West wasn't bad. I can't say the teachers was really bad because at that time I tuned them out. And it was a whole lot of other stuff, It wasn't a good experience for me. So as a teacher, what do you think? How did busing affect our community in your aspect? Do you think it helped us or do you think it set us back?
Well, I started teaching in 72.
Okay.
So by then, the busing wasn't really affecting me as a student, you
Mhm.
know. I did get transferred as a result of busing because I was at East Tech for 3 years,
Mhm.
and they suddenly transferred me to Charles Elliott
Okay.
because they wanted to make it seem like they were shifting teachers around. So that was the only effect.
You don't think the teachers, it didn't affect you guys, it didn't care?
No.
Mhm.
But as a solution, I kind of have two thoughts on that. I understood the reason for it, but the reason was a racist reason. When you had white kids in the school, that's when the school got the resources. And to me, that was basically why they were shifting everybody around.
Okay.
And what I don't like about it is that it was disruptive
Mhm.
and really caused a lot of people to become disenchanted with the schools.
I look at it like in my position that, nothing is 100%.
Yeah.
So I fell on that side, maybe the small percentage that just didn't get it or it didn't work.
Yeah.
That was me. Maybe it worked for the majority of the people, but I don't think it did for me. Oh, this is a chief moment of the program. He plays this song because this is a song about a group I used to like, and the rhythm of it is about a song that says, "Here is something you might not understand." So I ask my guests this question all the time when they come on. We hear this song. I want you to tell me something that you just don't understand what's going on these days. And I'll give you examples. Did you see on the news the other day the kid who tried to rob the Starbucks?
Mhm.
And what was so crazy about it, when you listen to the police officer, when you listen to the people in the store, when you listen to the neighbors where it all took place and they said the shootout happened in their backyard, you know what the common denominator out of all of them, what they said?
But
God must really didn't have a plan. They was like, it was the worst plan ever. They all said it was like, he was just sitting in the car, was like, you know what? I'm going to grab this paper bag. I'm going to grab this gun. I'm going to right into Starbucks in the middle of, where was that?
I forget where it was.
Definitely a suburb way away from here. Don't know what the hell he was out there for in the first place.
They had so much camera.
So much,
It's like,
so much camera footage on it. It was, so I don't understand that at all. So
okay.
I'm going to ask you, Meryl Johnson, tell me something you don't understand that's happening these days.
Well, my thing is going to be political. I just don't understand how these Republicans can be so evil.
Hmm.
I don't understand. I don't understand how they can suddenly want to force teachers to lie in the classroom
Hmm.
and just totally erase history. I don't understand how they can come up with a bill that would say you can't teach that the United States has a whole bunch of racism going on. I don't understand how they deny the existence of systemic racism, and you see it every single day. I don't understand how they can see houses that are boarded up that shouldn't have been boarded up, how they can see that Black kids in schools still score lower than white kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's systemic racism.
So that's a good point for us to pivot because
Yeah.
part of the reason why you're here. Tell us about this new bill. Meryl Johnson is a member of our state school board, and what she's saying is a
19.
19-member board. And
11 are elected.
Okay.
And 8 are appointed by the governor.
Okay.
So I am the elected member.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see why I said thank goodness in a minute.
Okay.
So the reason that the systemic racism took me directly to the resolution,
Mm-hmm.
because the resolution was a resolution to condemn racism and to advance equity and opportunity for Black students, Indigenous students, and students of color.
So the board wanted to present this resolution.
This was put together by 3 other board members and myself in direct response to the murder of George Floyd
Okay.
in May of 2020. So there were 3 other board members, Linda Haycock, Stephanie Dodd, and Laura Kohler, who was our president at the time on the board.
Okay.
The 4 of us got together and created this resolution.
Okay.
It condemned white supremacy. It talked about the importance of culturally responsive curriculum, which is a curriculum that allows students to see themselves in the curriculum. It talked about disproportionate amount of Black males who are being suspended and expelled in preschool.
Preschool.
Let me just tell you a quick story about that. Dr. Walter Gilliam out of Yale University, he was evaluating some preschools, and he noticed that Black males were being suspended and expelled more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went to a conference where preschool teachers were going to be, and he decided to show them a video with 4 children, a Black girl, Black boy, white girl, white boy, playing around a table. And he told the teachers, keep an eye on the kids. He said, try to anticipate, where you think the trouble might be. And so at the end, what he didn't tell them is that he was going to be following their eyes to see where they focused.
Mm.
And at the end of the video, he had a red dot that showed where the eyes were. And almost all the red dots were on the little black boy. And this was a diverse group of teachers, white, black, male, female.
Mm.
And what he discovered was implicit bias was causing these teachers to feel like the little black boy was the one who was going to be the troublemaker. And that was his conclusion based on his experiment.
Mm.
And so if you look at numbers in preschool of who's being suspended or expelled, it's black boys. So imagine that's the foundation.
Mm.
That's the foundation. So if you're being expelled or suspended in preschool and the other kids are seeing you, then imagine, number one, how they feel about you and how you're going to feel about yourself.
Right.
So that's why one of the things we included in the resolution was, whereas starting as early as preschool, black male students are affected disproportionately by suspensions, expulsions, and zero tolerance discipline policies. So that was in our resolution. We said that we wanted all the staff at the Ohio Department of Education to receive implicit bias training so that you can begin to see where your biases are, because our biases aren't really always our fault. They're affected by what we see out there.
Okay.
And we also asked for school districts to evaluate and to do an audit of their own districts to check out their hiring practices, their professional development, their discipline policies, their textbooks, their curriculum. So this was all in this resolution. And the purpose of it was so that we could try to deal with the disproportionality of Black kids and kids of color and how they end up getting in trouble for the same offenses, by the way.
Same offenses.
But in Ohio, the number of suspensions of Black kids was twice as much as white kids, and sometimes for the same offenses. So
Wow.
we put this resolution together. It passed on July 14th of 2020 by a vote of 12-5 with one abstention. And we were having Zoom meetings at that time, and we worked until 11 o'clock at night to get it passed.
So let me ask a question, because you said something, and I want to try to figure this out. African-American students are being suspended twice as much as white students. Most of the African-American kids are going to schools that are in African-American communities, being taught by mainly African-American teachers. White kids living in a white community, being taught mainly by white teachers, or mixed, right?
You look Garfield Heights, Maple Heights.
Garfield, Maple Heights,
there's white kids, there's white kids, black kids.
What I was hearing, though, the city of Cleveland, and I'm going to pivot on this because we just conversating, right? Remember crack cocaine came out, and they were saying in the city of Cleveland, you can get caught with a crack rock or so-and-so, and you'll end up getting twice as much time as if you were in Cleveland Heights or if you were in Shaker Heights or any of these white neighborhoods. And it seemed like Black people are going to jail more than white people for the same offense.
That's your systemic racism.
That's just systemic. So why is Black people suspending Black kids more? If it's Black teachers and we're in the Black community, why are we suspending our kids twice as much as the white kids? Are they working those issues out differently in the white community versus the teachers in that?
It's not just a Black issue, it's implicit bias. You could have Black teachers. There's Black teachers who have low expectations of Black kids because of implicit bias. I could be a middle-class Black teacher and have a low expectation of this hood Black child,
Right.
because I see you on the news all the time leaning against a building with your hands up.
Willie Lynch.
Okay? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. And so that's what it's about. And that's why I send articles to my superintendents all the time about implicit bias. I just sent them one last week about teacher expectations. I'm getting ready to send them this article that I brought with me called What White Children Need to Know About Race. I'm getting ready to send that out because I'm trying to get them to deal with implicit bias. Because if we could just deal with that,
Right.
that would make all the difference in the world. When you go walk by a room and advanced placement classes, you're not going to see a whole bunch of Black kids in there, even though the Black kids are smart.
Right.
It's because people don't think that they can handle it.
Right.
A lot of times folks think they're doing a good thing. Well, I don't want to put him someplace where he might not do well, So, and that's implicit bias, low expectations, it's racism, it can be all of that.
Right.
So that's what our resolution was about.
Got you.
Now, we have local control in Ohio.
Okay.
So we can't make anybody do anything. So in our resolved, we put that we strongly recommended that all Ohio school districts begin a reflection and internal examination of their own. Ken, you would be amazed. We passed this in May 14th of 20. We have a public participation period during our board meetings. We meet every month on the second Monday and Tuesday. And people can come in and they can say whatever they want. They can talk about something we're going to vote on, or they can just talk about something that's on their heart. We became the target of all of Trump's friends.
Oh, I imagine.
It was painful.
Mm.
There's 3 Black members on the board out of 19.
Mm.
It was painful for me to sit there and listen to all this racist talk.
Wow.
It was horrible. So in 2020, we had another election. I was reelected, and we got another member. He decided he wanted to rescind our resolution.
Really?
Yeah. Now remember, we weren't making anybody do anything.
It's just a resolution. Anybody know what a resolution is? Is hear you.
Yeah. we would like to see happen.
Right.
Where we dealt with the facts
Right.
of what was going on. He did a resolution to rescind this.
Wow.
And it got rescinded.
Whoa.
October of 2021. But here where it becomes the Godfather. I call it the Godfather. Remember I mentioned the appointed members. We have 8 appointed members. They're the reason that we were able to pass the resolution in July of 2020.
Okay.
Because it passed 12-5.
Okay.
So some of the appointed members voted for it,
Thought it
right?
was a good idea. Let's go for it.
They were threatened by 2 members of the Senate and the governor that if they didn't vote to rescind it, they would be kicked off the board.
Wow.
And guess what? 2 of them, our president, Laura Kohler, and a member, Eric Pockler, they got a phone call and said they had to resign because they did not vote to rescind.
Wow.
Yeah. I was telling somebody this. I said, wonder they didn't have a horse's head in their bed because it was a mobster mentality.
Wow.
If you don't do what we say, you're going to be gone.
That's why you got elected.
Yeah. And Eric Pockler, I respect him so much because he kept asking, what's wrong with it? He kept trying to get the folks to say, what's wrong with it? And they never answered him.
Wow.
And so he didn't vote to rescind. And he got a call, and Laura got a call, and they're no longer on the board.
Wow.
So that's the toxic environment that I'm working in now. My first 4 years were very pleasant because they were very child-centered people, and it just wasn't the same. But after new folks got elected, then the people who were already on the board who voted against it, they were empowered.
Wow.
Okay. So the people that voted to rescind this, they deny the existence of systemic racism. And those are the same people that have started this critical race theory garbage.
That's what I was going to go next.
Yeah.
It's critical race theory.
Yeah.
For the people who didn't want to ask the question, explain to everybody what the heck is that?
Yeah. First of all, critical race theory has been weaponized by the right wing, by Trump's folks. It is a good thing. Okay. It's not taught in K-12 schools, it's taught in law schools. Critical race theory is simply a framework to examine how systemic racism exists in the United States because of government policies. In other words, it's intentional. That's what it is. Back right after the Civil Rights Act was passed in 64, and the Voting Rights Act was passed in 65, the late Professor Derek Bell and his colleague Kimberly Crenshaw were wondering why there was still so much racism and discrimination against Black people, even though these laws had been passed. And they discovered that it was because there were government policies that were being passed that continued the systemic racism. And so that's when critical race theory appeared. And it was designed to be able to examine those government policies that create that systemic racism. That's all it is. And so the people who are anti-CRT, those are the Trump folks. And they're against diversity, equity, inclusion, courageous conversations, social justice. They hate social emotional learning. They don't want you to deal with kids' emotions because then you're trying to collect data on them. And it's a really terrible thing. And they say parents should be doing that. They're trying to mess up our schools, and it's just awful.
It's certain history they don't want you to even teach, right? Isn't it down to that?
They don't want you to teach the truth about America's history at all. At all. And the latest thing, one of the sponsors of House Bill, it's House Bill 327 that I'm talking about. And one of the sponsors, she's a state rep, Sarah Fowler Arthur, and she used to be on the state board with me. And just in the past 2 days, she made some statements that were all over the news because they're saying that House Bill 327 says teachers have to teach issues in an impartial way.
Mm.
How do you teach slavery in
Mm.
an impartial way? Like there's a good side
Right.
and a bad side.
Right.
Well, you know, she said, well, you should be able to talk to the people during the Holocaust, but you should also be able to hear a German soldier's side. And when she said that,
It was over.
media blew up.
Oh yeah.
It blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was writing about it. And so now they're saying that's what 327 is about. You actually want a teacher to stand there and tell the good side of slavery and the Holocaust and all that. And it's ridiculous.
But you know what? Couldn't they really be setting themselves up for a real serious failure? Can you really stand up there in front of a class and try to make a good thing out of the Holocaust?
It's impossible.
How you sit up there and try to say, okay, yeah, it was slavery, but we're going to talk about the master
Let's
side
talk
of
about the master side. How did he feel when he is whipping you across?
Yeah, I mean, how can you really get up there and think you can explain yourself out of that? Maybe they really setting themselves up for failure. You know, it sounds
But
ridiculous.
see, here's the bad news. There's nobody to hold them accountable
Mm.
because of gerrymandering. So
Right.
even if it is failure, they're not going
Yeah,
anywhere.
ain't going nowhere.
See, and that's the problem. There's stuff in the law that says that teachers can't deal with current events.
So this is the new law they're
This
trying
is
to.
the new law. This is the new law. You can't teach that equality is based on race.
Mm.
You can't teach that. And we know it is, right?
So they actually trying to put this in the legislature.
Yep. Right now it's in what's called the State and Local Government Committee because bills, they start off in the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they get voted out of the committee, then they'll go to the House and then they'll go to the Senate, you know, and then they'll go to the conference committee or whatever, and then they go to the governor to be signed. So what has been happening is so many people are fighting against this bill that it hasn't gotten out of committee yet, which is very unusual because the bill hit in May 2021
Mhm.
and it's still in committee. So it shows that all of these letters and emails and phone calls are making a difference because the bill is stalled. It hasn't come out of the committee. But Ken, it is one of the worst things that has come out of the General Assembly. Here it is. It says, we have to adhere to the following concept, that any individual cannot succeed or achieve equality because of the individual's race, ethnicity, color, sex, religion, or national origin. You know that's a lie. But a
That's
teacher
crazy.
has to, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that if you're African American, your chance for success might be threatened.
Right.
You're not allowed to say that even though it's true.
Mm.
And that's because they close their eyes to the possibility of systemic racism. It's awful. And it's going to affect colleges. This is a higher ed thing too. And there are university presidents that are writing letters to the legislators because it's going to threaten their accreditation. Because if they can't deal with diversity or equity, that's the reason some students go to particular colleges because they want to major in social justice or diversity or whatever. So if colleges are not allowed to teach that, that's going to affect their accreditation. So the higher ed institutions are panicking right now.
Who puts this together?
There's been a national move to destroy public education for years
Mhm.
because they want it all to be privatized
Mhm.
so their buddies can get all kinds of money. We have a bunch of for-profit charter schools in Ohio,
Mhm.
and they make plenty of money claiming that they're dealing with education.
Mhm.
So these bills come from larger organizations, the Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, one of them's dead now, so it's the Koch brother. ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. For the people who are listening, look up ALEC, ALEC, exposed on the internet.
Okay.
They are the ones that write, it's about 2,000 right-wingers. They write the model legislation. They send it to their dues-paying members in every state. And that's why we have these bills that hit all the states.
Gotcha.
So 18 states have passed a law like this, and about 30-something, the rest of them have it pending. So a bill like this has hit almost every state.
So do you have any of our local legislators working with you on this?
Well, not just legislators, but the League of Women Voters,
Mhm.
they have been pit bulls
Oh,
on
okay.
this. They
Okay.
are wonderful. They have a fabulous website. It's honestyforohioeducation.info. It's the most brilliant website I've ever seen. They keep track of the bill. They have action steps,
Mhm.
phone numbers, emails, information about the bills themselves, because there was also House Bill 322. So there's two of the bills.
Okay.
322 was basically for K to 12, but 327 was for K to 12 and for higher ed. But I haven't even mentioned the worst part. The worst part, Ken, is the punishment if teachers are caught teaching this stuff. They
Okay.
can lose their license. For the first time they're caught teaching, telling the truth about America's history, they can have a warning. The second time, their license can be suspended. If
Mm.
they're caught a third time, they can have their license revoked. We're talking about their livelihood,
Wow.
how they raise their families. And the school districts can lose 25% of their funding first time, 50% of their funding second time, 100% of their funding if they have teachers teaching the truth about America's history. They're going after our kids.
Mm.
See, because our students are the ones who are going to really be hurt by this because they're going to be the ones being lied to. Teachers are being hurt also because they can lose their license. We have teachers talking about taking early retirement, and we already have a shortage of teachers for public education.
So they just want to keep the regular history that they've been teaching again.
Well, it's already whitewashed, okay?
Right.
So they want to make it whiter.
Wow.
Yeah. And we really have to hear the student voice on this. So I put together a group of about 13 students. I asked my teacher friends to send me some kids who they thought would be passionate about this.
Mhm.
And so I put a group together of about 13 students. Thank goodness for Zoom. We had some Zoom meetings. And so they wanted to name themselves. So they named themselves SPEAK, Students Promoting Equity and Knowledge.
Okay.
A very nice acronym.
Okay.
And so I had them write letters to the editor, and I got 10 letters from them. And I just wanted to read a couple of things that they said. Young lady Kayla Blake
Mhm.
from a Cleveland school, here's an excerpt from what she wrote. She said, as a Black student in America, it is already hard enough to have my identity recognized and my history acknowledged, especially in the classroom. But these two bills would only make everything worse.
Mm.
And then Erica, she's also from a Cleveland student, and she said, you may say, I'm not racist, I don't see color, but that belittles the justice that people of color have been fighting for 400 plus years. Color blindness is a systematic excuse to justify conversations people aren't ready to have.
Mm.
Isn't that deep? And so I sent their letters to a couple of community newspapers. You probably know the Cleveland Observer.
Right. Right.
And I also sent them to the East Side News.
Okay.
And they printed all 10 letters. Cleveland Observer, the community liked hearing from kids so much that Ron Calhoun
Mhm.
told me that they wanted more.
Okay.
So 2 of them now, they write a letter every month and they get $50 for each letter.
Oh.
And so I love being able to get them hired as writers. But I'm asking people to really get kids involved in this. It's an issue that's easy for them to write about because they don't want to be lied to. They don't want their teachers losing their jobs because they're just trying to do their job.
Mhm.
And so if people go on honestyforohioeducation.info, then they can find out phone numbers and emails and how to take action steps. And so it's teacher in me.
Mhm.
But in Tennessee, this law has passed.
Really?
Yeah. And they have a group called the Moms of Liberty.
Mhm.
And they're into banning books now.
Okay.
That's a big thing
Mhm.
now, too. They wanted to ban Ruby Bridges Goes to School. 32
Wow.
pages. It's a baby book. And they wanted to ban it because of this picture. How dare you show white people being mean and holding signs? That's why they wanted to ban the book.
Wow.
But what they didn't read is that Ruby Bridges, she had to be walked into William Frantz Elementary
Mhm.
in New
Right.
Orleans
Right.
by marshals
Mhm.
because of the people out there.
Mhm.
But when she got in, the parents came in and pulled their kids out of the school. And so Ruby was there all by herself.
Wow.
And her white teacher, Barbara Henry, taught Ruby for an entire year as if she was teaching the whole class.
Mm.
And Ruby grew to love her, and Barbara Henry grew to love Ruby. And at the end of the book, Ruby says that she was so happy that the white kids eventually came back to the school and she was able to have friends to play with.
And they want to ban that.
They want to ban this. See, and that's the thing. When they talk about telling lies about history, and that it makes the white kids feel bad, it makes them feel guilty, and teachers aren't allowed to do that. I said, teachers don't do that. We don't try to make kids feel guilty, but that's in the law. Those words are in the law, that you will not make a child feel guilty or ashamed. And I said, well, why have the kids relate to the abolitionists? They were white people doing good stuff.
Right,
You know,
right.
the white people weren't the old.
They were the only. Yeah, everybody wasn't like that.
Right,
Right,
right. So I'm saying, okay, so let's have a change
right.
in attitude. And
Talk about how it changed
yeah,
and how America got to where it is.
yeah.
You guys want to just skip over it like it never happened.
See, and you got kids wondering, well, why are there no black kids in my class? But there are no black kids in my AP class? You know, if you don't explain why, then you might have white kids thinking that black kids actually aren't as smart as they are.
That's correct.
And that's unhealthy. It's untrue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's important for us to make sure that we have a social justice type of environment where everybody is treated fairly and they get to learn how we got to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we are, because of systemic racism. We got some terrible legislators.
Mm.
And because of gerrymandering, it's hard to get them out of there.
It's hard to get them out of there. They did.
And that's why I love that the Ohio Supreme Court keeps telling them no. Because these are white folks. They're not used to be told no.
Oh, and they're battling on that. I mean, they really.
Yeah.
We still don't have a district for our congressional seats or any of that.
Right.
Right now.
And wait a minute. Let me tell you what they did to my state board district.
Uh-huh.
Because, you know, state board, my district, the way they do it, I have 3 Senate districts.
Mm-hmm.
I represent about 1 million people.
Okay.
3 Senate districts.
All right.
20, 21, 23, and 25. The way their gerrymandering is turning out, it ended up giving me districts where I wouldn't even have most of Cuyahoga County. I would have Wayne County,
Wow.
Ashland County, and Medina County,
Wow.
which would eliminate the black vote, basically.
Mm.
No black people would be able to win in District 11 anymore,
Wow.
the way they're changing it.
Well, they're trying to take your seat anyway.
Well, yeah, that's my
Yeah.
point. Yeah. And it's just very vindictive
Okay.
behavior. We continuing to fight back. We're asking people to call and to send emails and just to make sure that folks know what's happening.
Well, Mark, we want to thank you. Coming on our program, did an excellent job. You gave us a lot of information. And one thing's for sure, we're going to have you back because I want to continue the conversation on education. Meryl, that's your camera right there,
Okay.
Ms. Johnson. I want you to sit there. You take your time. Let everybody know how they can get involved again.
Okay.
Camera's yours. Take your time. Do whatever you like.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I didn't even mention my radio show that I have every Saturday from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock on WRUW 91.1 FM, or you can listen online at WRUW.org. Just today, we're doing unions. Okay, I'm talking about the importance of unions. Next week, I'll be talking about Say Yes to Education, something that Cleveland system has that makes it possible for everybody who goes to Cleveland schools beginning in 9th grade to be able to go to college paid for or to have trade school paid for. I'd like for you to tune in because it's always going to be a good show. It's called It's About Justice. Again, Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m., 91.1 FM, WRUW.org online. If you want more information, and I hope you do, about the bill, House Bills 322 and 327, which would force teachers to lie to their students under threat of losing their license and under threat of districts losing 100% of their funding, you can go to honestykforohioeducation.info. Please go to that website. You will get all kinds of information. And the most important thing is you will get action steps. I've made my calls. There's about 15 members of the state and local government committee that you need to call and just tell them, vote no on House Bill 327. So please follow up on that. We have to put our arms around our kids and protect them from legislators who are trying to do that.
Thanks again, Ms. Johnson, for coming out. We look forward to having you. And everybody, look at the comments below. We put in links to how you can get in touch with Ms. Johnson, as well as all of that information will be in our description section. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Sounds like